Hi everyone, Quiveen here from the comfort of my kitchen. In today's video, we're going to very quickly go over the zodiacal constellations, the constellations that we see in the sky along the path of the ecliptic, which is where we see the planets, the moon and the sun, roughly speaking at least. Taking a look at the planets at sunset, we have of course looked at these planets going through their wonderful conjunctions, like this conjunction between Venus and Jupiter, Mercury coming to its greatest elongation, and then Mercury changing direction and moving back in towards the sun. So we'll very quickly take a closer look at that. We're looking in the constellation Gemini here. There's Pollux and Castor, the two twins of Gemini. Here are the lines that join together to make that constellation. So we can see that Mercury, Jupiter and Venus are pretty much within Gemini. If we bring up the boundaries of the constellations, you'll see that Venus and Jupiter here, well, Venus at least, is just about to move into Cancer. Jupiter just about moves into Cancer as well, whereas Mercury turns around and moves back towards the sun. So this is Mercury's retrograde motion. As we get later in June, Mercury will reach its furthest point from the sun. Of course, Mercury is more or less making a circle around the sun. It's orbiting the sun. So Mercury has come around the sun and it's about to go back around the sun. It's continuing around the sun. It just looks like it's moving backwards from our position here on Earth. Venus is going to take a little bit longer to do the same thing. We can see it here continuing to move away from the sun, but eventually it reaches its greatest elongation and it starts falling back towards the sun. And that is really all that retrograde motion is. But as we go through this path, as we go through the time and see these changes, we can see the planets moving from constellation to constellation. Venus moving into Leo, Jupiter staying in Cancer until it ends up going behind the sun, the superior conjunction between Jupiter and the sun. And we can see the sun moving through Cancer and then into Leo as we move forward through time. The moon, of course, is doing the same thing, just quite a bit faster. So we can see here, a little bit later in June, there's the moon near Mercury, near Jupiter, in Gemini, moving forward into Cancer, moving forward into Leo. Takes a couple of days for the moon to get through Leo. It is a bigger constellation, and it will also take a few days for the moon to get through Virgo. It is a bigger constellation compared to Libra, for example, just one day there in Libra before it passes into Scorpius. These are the zodiacal constellations, the constellations that are on the ecliptic where we see the planets, the sun and the moon. These are real constellations, and I'm sure you know most of their names. They are sometimes called the signs of the zodiac. They're regularly written in the backs of the newspaper. But we can see here as we move through time, these constellations are different sizes, and the sun doesn't exclusively pass through them. So just here we can see the sun has left the boundaries of the constellation Scorpius and it's moving through the constellation Ophiuchus or Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is probably more accurate. We can see that it's in that constellation, the 13th sign of the zodiac, for several days before it moves into Sagittarius. Sagittarius is also a reasonably big constellation, so the sun is there for quite a while. Capricornus is a bit smaller, so it's not there for quite as long before it passes into Aquarius and eventually into Pisces. Pisces is a pretty big constellation before the sun passes into Aries, which is fairly small, through Taurus, another larger constellation, and then back into Gemini a year later. We are through to, well, a little bit after this time next year. So there we go, a little bit closer to this time this year. We'll move back, and as we do, you might notice that the times that the sun crosses these boundaries, it doesn't line up with the dates. Like for example here, we're on the 19th of the 4th as the moon falls back into Pisces, and just here we're on the 14th of the 3rd as the moon falls back into Aquarius. So some of these constellations don't last a full month. For example, here on the 16th day of the 2nd month, the sun is in Aquarius and it's gone again there by the 18th day of the 1st month. So that means it's not a full month. It's a couple of days off of being exactly a month. And as we go through here, we can still see the moon making its very, very quick journey passing by. The moon will always be pretty much in one of these constellations, the same way the sun will always be pretty much in one of these constellations. So here we are a little bit back closer to today with the sun just there in Taurus. The signs of the zodiac are abstractions, they're terms for the zodiacal constellations that are sometimes a little bit easier to pronounce. For example, Scorpius is the constellation. The sign of the zodiac is usually called Scorpio, and every one of those 12 zodiac signs is given a month. Not from the 1st to the end of the month, usually it's around the 22nd day that they pass over, but they all have an equal amount of time, which we can see here isn't true for the actual constellations in the sky, the actual pictures. Now, of course, these are the pictures that we use in the modern day, and they are, of course, very, very old. So we're going to go back to the sky cultures, and we're going to take a look at the Greek constellations. So we'll come down here to the Almagest. It does still have the lines, so that's good. There's also another one here that's also labeled as the Almagest. They're both labeled as different kinds of Greek, and another one here, another Greek in the Almagest. So I think we'll go with this one. It's possibly the older one out of them, but they don't seem to have dates. This one exclusively says the Almagest at least, which was written by an astronomer named Ptolemy. We can see how the lines here are different. We can also see the names of the planets have changed. So Venus is being called the goddess of love, Jupiter is being called the father of the gods, Mercury the messenger of the gods. Of course, these would be names like Hermes and Aphrodite if they were translated into Greek. The images, we're only getting a couple of actual pictures, so that's not very useful for our purposes, but let's take a look through and see if there's any major differences in the constellations that we're seeing. We're still seeing Leo, Virgo, we're still seeing Libra, a little bit chopped up, but it's still there. We're still seeing Scorpius coming through Ophiuchus and coming through Capricornus, or Sagittarius, coming through Sagittarius there and into Capricornus, and then Aquarius. I think that with some of these drawings, they actually come closer to looking like the picture they're meant to be. Pisces, not so much. But we're still going through the exact same constellations. Here we are back to Taurus. Those are the same constellations. They've been in the sky for hundreds of years, thousands of years, depending on the picture. Let's see if I can get, yes, some more detailed images, some more recognizable pictures. We can still see that it's moving into Gemini and Cancer, but the years that were used, the dates that were used were very, very different in ancient Greece and in ancient Rome. The way that the year was divided up was different. So these images, they were originally created laid out across the sky for years that weren't broken into 12 months, that weren't necessarily broken up into 12 moons even. They could be 13 moons, they could be 12 moons. The way the calendar worked was very, very different. We've gone all the way forward to 2028, so we'll start coming back. If you download this software, Stellarium, there's a link to download it in my description. Also on the Stellarium website is a web version that you can interact with without having to download anything. You can use that to figure out where the sun was on the day you were born and what picture it was actually in front of. That same software, as you can see here with all the planets and the moons, it will show you where the moon was and the planets, what constellations they were in front of on the day you were born to the minute you were born. And it may differ from what's written in the back of the newspaper. It may differ from whatever any astrologer may have told you. It may be different from what astronomy says is true about the sky, which is why I wanted to be so clear about the differences, what retrograde motion actually is, where the sun's position actually is in the sky, before I suggested to anyone to check it out. Because if astrology is something that you're interested in, it won't agree with astronomy. They're different things. So of course they're going to look at these things in a slightly different way. But if you want to see where these stars actually are in the sky, then this is the way to do it. Now I do want my pictures to keep coming up, so I want to, yes, get back to this. This is the way that we currently see the sky, based on the same constellations that have been used, particularly in this region of the sky, for thousands of years. But things have changed, where the boundaries are changed, how they're drawn is changed, and how we measure the length of the year and the dates have changed. And of course, the dates, well, that's the important thing. If you want to know exactly where the sun was on a given date, the date, of course, matters. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you take a look at these constellations in some form of stellarium yourself. You can also check out some of my past videos on this topic on this YouTube channel or on my website, queevinscontent.ie. If you enjoy this kind of content, then please subscribe to my website or my YouTube channel, and hopefully I'll see you back here next time.